Katherine Alexander. I live in Washington, D.C. I'm 35 years old. I work at an early childhood center in Washington, D.C. I was born in 1983 in Nahant, Massachusetts. My parents still live there in the house I grew up in. And I have an older sister. She's 3 years older than me. My parents both studied psychology. My father is a psychiatrist. He's retired now. But they both worked really hard to make our family life even better than what they'd experienced as children. They would always say that when they were kids, they were taught that children should be seen and not heard. And they wanted very much to just be revolutionaries and not have that kind of family life. So we were encouraged to play and to express ourselves and to be kids. My father also taught me a lot about the value of music and theater. I started playing piano on his lap as a toddler and took lessons as a child. And I stopped taking lessons when I was in middle school, but I never really stopped playing. Christmas was a big holiday. When we were little, my parents would, when they bought us toys, they would open up the boxes of toys and wrap each individual piece. So we would have like a million things to open on Christmas. So when Smurfs were really big in the early 80s, they would open up the boxes and wrap each individual Smurf so that we could have so many things to open. My mother always makes these special cookies for Christmas, and my birthday is in early February, and so she would make the same cookies but in little hearts with pink frosting because my birthday is so close to Valentine's Day, and she would make those for my birthday every year. She would still make those cookies for me like well into adulthood. The town I grew up in only had an elementary school that went up through 6th grade. So when we graduated from elementary school, we joined a nearby town for middle school. My mother had been on the school committee in my hometown, and going into like puberty time and a new school and a new place with my mom not as close to me or closely involved in the school, it was a lot of changes. I really struggled. I especially struggled with school and the workload. The school I went to was like a college prep type middle school. I'd always gotten good grades. I was very smart. I'm still very smart. I was going to this new school where there were lots of projects where I had to manage my time. High school was much of the same, and college was also similar. And by the time I was at the end of college and my advisors were telling me to pick a profession, the only thing I could think of was education reform, because I was so miserable in school, and I just thought that it seemed to me that there were only a handful of kids who really did well in the way the system works. I got some advice from a professor to get into teaching. If I wanted to get into ed reform, get experience in the classroom. In high school, in my freshman year advanced English class, our teacher taught us lots and lots of really advanced vocabulary words. And he would often sneak in controversial vocabulary words to get conversations going. And one of those words was existentialism. He said the definition of the word, and people would ask questions, and we talked about existentialism for weeks. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. My mind was blown at these philosophy terms and these conversations and questions. I had been going to church as a Christian for my whole life to doubt. I was like, oh, I can doubt the existence of God? It was mind-blowing, and I loved it. I was so intrigued with the questioning. Be like, well, how do we know there's a God? What if there is no God? What if everything they say in church isn't true? High school was really hard for me, and I was so excited to get to college where I could just take philosophy classes. So that's what I did. I really struggled with making decisions, and so a lot of decisions I just kind of went with what was going on, the indecision made its own decision. Also, by the time I finished college, I had really fallen in love with one of my professors, not in the romantic way, but I just loved his classes. He taught sociology, and by the time I finished, I had a sociology minor. After I graduated college, I did a year with AmeriCorps. Two of my best friends from college were a bit younger than me, so they were still in school. And so when I was in AmeriCorps, they called me up and told me about this new faith they were learning about. And I had never heard of it. And then after I got back, after my program ended, I went to visit them, and they told me about the Baha'i faith, and I thought it sounded interesting. It seemed the brief ways that they introduced it to me seemed to resonate with things I'd always believed. And then when they mentioned Baha'u'llah, I thought, oh no. I thought, are you kidding me? A new prophet came in the 1800s? Like, that initial reaction was, we had been taught that be wary of any new religion because it's usually someone just trying to take your money or your life or your time, and it's probably not legitimate. They respected that, and they continued to share with me, but in a way that was not pushy or commanding or demanding of my time. With my philosophy major and my community service work, I really still didn't really know where I was going in terms of a career, and I felt quite lost, as I often still do. They asked me, well, what do you want to do? And I thought, yeah, I guess teaching. And my friend Joe picked up a book and leafed through it and found a paragraph. And he's like, well, just read this paragraph and see if it resonates with you. And I think the book is The Secret of Divine Civilization, maybe, by Abdu'l-Baha. And so I read this paragraph. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 short paragraphs, not even a full page of writing. And I was blown away. I had studied philosophy in a university for 5.5 years, and I had never read anything so succinct and wise and on par with how I view the world and how I wanted things to be for education. The quote from the book, Abdu'l-Baha was talking about how education isn't about one person lecturing and giving knowledge to others, that it's more of a circular fashion of someone facilitating the learners to be empowered to learn things for themselves. And that was what I had studied in my internship for early childhood in my last year of college. It just was so mind-blowing to see something really powerful and meaningful and true, and it felt true in a short paragraph when I'd been reading multiple chapters and books of like really boring stuff. I was living at home. This is 2008. I had graduated school, finished my year with AmeriCorps, and I also was in a lot of pain. My feet had started to hurt halfway through my term with AmeriCorps. I probably should have gone home, but I was so committed to finishing the program. If I finished the program, I would get an education award to help pay for my loans. When I got home, I was really sad. I was really just every day like, why is my body still hurting? Why do my feet hurt so much? I read the entire Harry Potter series twice up in my room in my parents' house. I was working a couple small part-time jobs, and my newly Baha'i friends were reaching out to me and getting me out of my cave, and they brought me to some devotional gatherings, which I'd never heard of. I was really shy, and it all seemed kind of weird. And I also, when I first learned about the rules of the faith, one of the rules is that we're not allowed to drink or do drugs unless prescribed by a doctor. And at that time, I couldn't really see a world without alcohol. But the more they brought me to meet their Baha'i friends, I was really impressed by seeing people that didn't drink engage with each other and build relationships. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to have relationships with other people and not need alcohol to loosen up. I was invited to go to a weekend workshop up in Green Acre in Maine. I was heading out that morning. I had my backpack on, and I was going to go to work in Boston and then get a ride with friends or take a bus up to Maine. My mother went walking with a friend of hers often in the mornings, but her friend that was there wanted to know where I was going for the weekend, and I said, I'm going to this Baha'i workshop, and she was like lit up like a Christmas tree and hugged me, and there were tears in her eyes, and she like lavished praise on me. She said, this is going to be so good for you. There was someone she knew who was Baha'i in her life, and she really expressed her appreciation for the faith, and that she couldn't quite join because she was so attached to our community in the town, but that she had a deep love for the faith. And that won over my mother. I ended up carpooling with some other young people that were on their way to the conference. It was a young people's, young professionals workshop for the weekend, and the car ride was one of the best parts of the whole thing, because we just all got to know each other in the car, and I felt very welcome at the conference. I was very nervous. I was so nervous. I had always used alcohol to help me engage in social situations, and here I was with all these people who were just talking to each other, maybe drinking tea, but so I was very nervous. But my friend introduced me to some people, and then I just started talking to them. there was this new Baha'i. He'd been a Baha'i for maybe 4 or 5 months, and he was like very excitable and excited, and I kind of caught that energy. It was very contagious, and so I started to get excited. Then he said, well, let's go pray in Abdul Baha's room. Greenacre, it's a Baha'i school where Abdul Baha came to visit in the US in 1912. And the room that he slept in has been converted into a prayer room. Abdul Baha's room is on the 2nd or 3rd floor, and my excited friend was racing up the stairs, and he stopped halfway, and I was huffing and puffing on the stairs to meet with him, and he showed me this painting on the wall, a photograph from the early 1900s, and it's a photograph of Abdul Baha, and there are some men following him, and they're writing down what he's saying, and Abdul Baha's looking at the camera, and he's got his hand up like this. And my friend said, what do you think Abdul Baha's trying to say to us? And I said, I don't know. Hi, like he's got his hand, I don't know. And my friend said, I think he's trying to tell me to slow down on the stairs. And we had a good laugh about that. And then we went up to pray. He showed me the room, and he said, some people like to lie down, some people like to sit cross-legged, some people like to close their eyes, and all of that is fine. So he taught me that there's no wrong way to pray. And at first I just listened to the prayers. I didn't feel comfortable reading anything. Then the next day was Saturday, and we had all of our workshops and meetings, and we were in between sessions, and I couldn't find my water bottle. I had this little pink water bottle from university, and it had the name of my school on it, and I was like, this is my $60,000 water bottle, you know? I wanna find it. I couldn't find it. And so I turned a corner in the hallway. I'm rushing, thinking about my water bottle, and I see this photograph, and I see Abdul Baha with his hand up like this. And I felt like prickles and pins and prickles all over my body from head to toe. I was like hot and cold and like a rush of energy. And I had this intense epiphany, really, where I realized that I didn't have to worry about the water bottle. I don't have to rush around worrying about a piece of plastic. Why am I worried about a piece of plastic? And I was just filled with love and acceptance and like complete surrender to Baha'u'llah. After I had my profound spiritual experience in the hallway, I went over to the administrative office that was 2 doors down from where I was standing, and I have a flair for drama, so I said, I need a pen. I said, could I have a pen, please? Because I need to sign this card. That night, I ended up staying up until 4 in the morning praying with a group of young Baha'is, which was like a complete reverse from what I'd been doing the past several years of my life, right? In college and as a young adult, we would stay up late partying and then feel terrible the next morning. And here I was excited to pray with other people. I was nervous about telling my parents I had joined this new religion because I knew they'd be skeptical. And I prayed about it. When I arrived back home and started sharing the news with my family, they had a healthy degree of skepticism, I think. But my mother, her best friend, had shown a lot of support, so my mother was having warm feelings towards me, especially me having a relationship with God, because she loves her relationship with God and prays and serves in the church, and I think she always wanted that for me too. I think in the first couple weeks, I remember having a really deep conversation with my father at the dinner table, and I remember him saying, kind of puzzled, just kind of working through it, talking out loud, and he's saying, well, you're still you, but you're very different. You've changed, but you are still you. And I loved that he could see that even though I had had this profound transformation, that I hadn't really changed at all. It doesn't matter your past. If your heart is searching, your answer will come to you like a breeze.